Hello, welcome to the Diablo podcast. We are online at diabloinkgamers.com. I am your host, Flux, and I am joined this week by Neinball
Guten Tag.
and by Katniss.
Aloha.
I always wonder, well, I don't always wonder, I sometimes wonder if people are listening to the start and they hear me, they hear the stupid music and they hear me start talking and they're like, I wonder who the guests are going to be this week. Maybe it'll be Ellie. And then it's never Ellie and they're disappointed.
It is never Ellie.
Or do they just read the description? You guys listen to podcasts you're not on. Do you read the description and see who the guests are, or do you just start listening?
I read the description first.
So there's never a surprise.
Yeah, well, I usually know who it is before I even, click on the link because you've told me so far. But yeah, I always read the description and the footnotes because I'll normally see it before I have a chance to listen to it.
Maybe there's someone who subscribes to iTunes and doesn't know, and it's a moment of surprise. I should milk that one time.
They're so excited. It's funny that there is always one comment that's like, "Bring Ellie back, please."
Yeah, she won't come on. Can I just tell you?
Oh,
Anyway, we are doing our podcast. This is kind of covering a lot of topics this week. No specific 2 hours on X, but we're going to talk about difficulty level changes and if they should drop a difficulty level entirely. And I have an idea about full clear bonuses. And we're going to talk about the affix hardcap info. I'm going to ask these guys about their Reaper of Souls starting plans, how they're going to do right away, and we're going to have some console stuff as well, hacks and online only, and a few other topics that the guests are dying to bring up. So we're going to be jumping around a lot, hopefully. And I will exercise the hook mercilessly and keep us on topic, unless of course I'm the one digressing, in which case it's all good. You think I'm joking, don't you? Okay. Anyway, so
The host is always right.
recent yeah, the host does the editing, so
you
yes,
you will be returning to this podcast then.
retrospectively correct, if only that. So recent play stuff. Just to start us off, when were you last on the podcast, Nine Ball, and what have you been playing in the meantime?
I think it was a couple of weeks ago when I was last on, and I subsequently lost my monk. I think like the same day or the day after you had lost your Paragon 91, as if you didn't need a reminder on that one again. But I I got my other monk up to 60, and I haven't really had much of a chance of playing. Been a lot of stuff going on. I leveled some alts, hardcore alts to 60, and have convinced some other of my friends to actually roll some hardcore characters. Got them to help level them up to 60. But that's what I've been doing so far.
You keep dying in the low paragons, right?
Yeah.
I think you always have a new level 27 whenever I log on. The next day you're 60, and it's like, why are you 27 again now?
Yes. Yes, I'm still learning the whole don't be bad thing in playing hardcore.
That and you're poor, so.
Yes.
Well, as you know, loot solves all problems. So, what have you been up to since you last appearance, Katniss?
Yeah, so I was on with the second glance, I guess, at looking at console and talking about the end game a little bit. Since then, I've leveled a few more classes on console. I did the Demon Hunter shortly after that podcast, and then I just last weekend did a Witch Doctor. So I was kind of trying out because I know we had talked, and Junior Mint and I had only done melee classes, so I wanted to do some range just to have some feedback on that. And I've actually found it to be pretty enjoyable. I posted a comment on someone's forum post recently, just talking about concerns. His wife started playing a wizard or whatever, and he was like, "Is she gonna have fun?" and all that good stuff. And I'm actually doing a wizard right now, just dinged level 49. And the auto targeting I think is just incredibly smart in the game. Like I'm using disintegrate, and I was wondering, you sit there and you channel it, so you hope that you're going to be hitting what you're supposed to be hitting, and it just really seeks out the targets. It's almost like a homing missile. So that's been pretty cool. And yeah, just leveling up and enjoying the console still.
So, how does disintegrate work compared to? You can't whip it around as quickly, I guess, since you have to use the little thumb pad. You can't, mouse from one side of your character to the other immediately, right? So it's more of a circular kind of thing.
That's a good point. Yeah, so you really just are kind of like spinning. You're still spinning to win, believe it or not. So you kind of just go around, and you'll see the mobs as they come in towards your central location. So you kind of just spin in the direction that you think they're going to hit first, and then as the other ones start to aggro and come, it really does kind of work in that arc way. So you're not really wasting that much arcane power.
So I wanted to talk about Paragon 2.0 and some ideas about that, and that ties in nicely to this because I was going to ask Nineball if he wants Paragon because he keeps dying and not getting any levels and restarting. But first for you, Katniss, on the console, Paragon level shares. It's not Sharagon system, but I mean your highest Paragon level is every character has the same Paragon level, right?
That is correct. Yes.
And so you have multiple level 60s now. And so if you have a if you're Paragon 20 with your Barb and you play a new Witch Doctor, he's immediately Paragon 20 as soon as you hit level 60.
As soon as you create the character, as soon as you load up into normal, easy, medium, hard, whatever, and you're at that starting point leading up to the gates, you can open up your character screen. And I had to test this because there were a couple of questions before. And you open up your character screen, you'll see if you're level Paragon 20, you have 60 intelligence right there. And you actually get the magic find and gold find bonuses too. So you're, already 60% MF up from just starting the game.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
So it must be really quick to do your alt then if you've got all those extra stat points.
oh, absolutely. And this actually references another forum post I just wrote up too. Like the ramping up of leveling is so much easier on the console if you have the right things. Because if you're Paragon level, whatever, that's already bonus stats. If you get a Hellfire, that obviously is giving you bonus EXP and 200 plus of your main stat already. You can get Kane's Set at level 22. You can get the Infernal Helm that gives you an automatic 25% at level 1. So the levels are absolutely just flying. It's so easy.
And you have your 67k DPS Azure Wrath with 3 sockets also, right?
Loaded up straight from the internet.
Only 67,000? That seems low from some of the screenshots I've seen.
Well, that's the twinked one. You get a better one at level 60.
Gotcha.
Right? You got to leave yourself something to look forward to.
And you can put that in both your ring slots and your amulet slot too, just like Diablo 2 hacks.
So ridiculous.
Or
Actually,
a bow around your neck.
I was in someone's Twitch last night, and someone was like, "Hey, streamer, have you found this ring yet?" And it was a ring that literally had, I think, like 13 properties on it, and it looked like a weapon. It was basically like all the stats, the stat stick that a weapon would have, just imported onto a ring.
So
So
some
were they all like plus 200 healing from health globes, or were they good stats?
It was all good stuff. It was like,
Oh, okay, that's nice. Because I've seen 13 stat rings myself, but usually it's like, plus 17 arcane resistance.
13
That's actually as
the 13 properties just reminds me of, some of the old Diablo 2 items that, literally would scroll past down the screen with how much stuff it had to say on it.
Yeah. So I guess we might as well mention the whole console thing now that people have. We had a funny forum post a couple days ago, and some guys like the console sucks. All the items are hacked. When you play a multiplayer game, people are just giving you these. I keep trying. They should be giving you Godly Play to the Whales, I guess, just to flashback to Diablo 1. But people are just. It's not secured. It allows offline play, and people have found ways to hex edit items and make hacked stuff that's really really big and makes the game essentially God mode. And people are upset about that. And as the obvious recollection is, of course, when when Diablo 3 was announced and they said online only, people were like, "Oh no, that's horrible." And Blizzard's like, "Well, we need this to stop, hacking." So, is there any way around this? I mean, are all console games hacked sooner or later?
I don't know. I don't have experience with a lot of other console games just because the ones I usually play are single player, like Final Fantasy or whatever.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Neinball, if you want to jump in.
I'm just remembering, when I used to play console a lot, back with Halo 2 days and such. And once you got on that online system, it was online only. But even then, there were hackers. Once you got into like the level 30s, on your way up to level 50, it's like everyone hacked. You got shot once with a sniper rifle in the foot, and it would count as a headshot, and you get insta kill. It's a whole bunch of stuff that people would just do. So if they have the capability to do it, people are going to do it to get any advantage that they can in the game because they just care about going and owning face, or how fast can they clear it, or how big can they get their damage number, how ridiculous can they get the item. That's what some people find fun, and so they'll go through any way they can.
And I think the thing that bugs me the most is that the saying of like there's no such thing as bad publicity kind of rings true, because even if you were to say like, well, I know this person over here is hacking, just the fact that you're talking about them hacking or using auto aim or whatever it is that they can put into the game that's not supposed to be there, they're still getting their name mentioned, and they still have that like EP feeling of, yeah, like all you guys are worried about what I'm doing over here. Whereas if you were to just ignore the hacks or whatever, play self-found, play, however you want to play it, it's like almost human nature to be concerned about what the guy next door is doing.
Yeah, because that's something that I see, a bunch of forum or Reddit posts and such is, oh, look at this guy, he's streaming and botting, and then they, of course, give a link to his stream, and so his stream numbers go up, and nothing is going to be done about it. So it's always that exactly what you were saying. It gets people publicity when they do bad things out in the open. Nothing happens.
So,
Yeah,
cheerfully,
exactly.
happily ever after. So other thing on the console, I was talking to Rankill last night in game, who was on I think he was on the second impressions or first impressions podcast about the console,
Mhm.
and he's still playing it on and off, but he's also been playing just regular PC version as well. I played with his Witch Doctor a little bit. He's still doing self-found too, so
Yeah.
he's like an anchor when you play multiplayer with him. No, I'm kidding. He's not that bad.
No, yeah, it's he helped power level my new monk and a friend of mine our final couple levels to 60 the other night, and yeah, his gear is for being self-found is actually really good. I think he was playing on his monk.
Yeah, I've only seen his Witch Doctor, but yeah, anyway. But he said that on the console, the problem he's had is multiplayer is really bad, online multiplayer. It's awesome on your couch, on your own machine, but not just because people are using hacks, but because it's really bad. The machines aren't powerful enough to run, it's just running it on some other guy's machine and sending you the data. It's like Diablo 1 kind of thing.
Oh, pleasant.
And he's doing it on a PS3, and he said it's just, your machine grinds just with yourself, and if you have somebody else, much less two or three people, connecting, it's just really, really slow. There's lots of lag and it's slideshow stuff. And also, he said some guy was running, he thought he was doing BitTorrents or something at the same time, and it was really slow latency. So, you get all the joys of not having client server on this, apparently,
Yeah,
and it's just slow.
I was just going to mention the same thing you said. Like it already bogs down plenty on your own when you're throwing out a bunch of spell effects and stuff. So I still haven't ventured online just because I am afraid of the hacks, and I don't know, I like playing by myself anyways. But yeah, I couldn't even imagine like a CM wizard and like a monk throwing out all their tornadoes and then being a spin to win barb or something like that. I would assume that I would just not even be able to play at that point because it'd be frozen.
The biggest issue, of course, is there's only 4 players. I want my 8 players back.
Something I've been noticing with the wizard right now as I've been leveling up is certain skills gain less, I guess efficiency is the word, with the more pulled in view. Because with teleport, if you're using, what is it, wormhole, it gives you like the 1 second delay before the cooldown comes up. Like you'll just run into walls because you can't even see that they're coming up, and then you just, you're holding down the button and you just pop, 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 and you're still stuck in that same place. So some
Wow.
skills definitely don't benefit from the changed perspective.
Do some skills do benefit from the change perspective?
I guess that is the flip side of that question.
I mean, I don't know. I'm serious. I mean, is anything why this works so much better? I mean, obviously some skills are better, like frogs, plague of toads
Right, yeah,
is much faster movement speed, but that's not because of the perspective. That's just because they changed the skill.
right,
I
yeah.
guess also if you're farming, maybe that when you were talking about the disintegrate earlier, how you had mentioned that it could actually pull things off the screen because it goes all the way out, whereas on the PC version it doesn't quite reach the edge of the screen, so that skill wouldn't be able to pull anything off scrone.
I guess that depends on your resolution, though. If you were on 640 or something, it probably would be
So
off the edge of the screen.
playing in D2 mode.
Right. Yeah, those are really the only differences, I suppose, are the skills that have radius and yardage that's off of what you can actually see. But other than that, like I guess it's more of a detriment, with quotes around it than a benefit.
Yeah.
Another thing Rankill said is he's getting bored with the item game. I mean, obviously, the loot 1.5, you get lots more stuff, and we were all wondering, is that going to get boring? Because you're finding so much stuff so quickly, you'll just get really high quality gear. And he said that he's already kind of getting bored with his main. He can't find any upgrades anymore, and it's just the same stats you want on the PC version. Are you running into that problem yet?
Yep. The short answer is yes. I think that's why I've re-rolled all these different classes. I mean, obviously, I like the experimentation part of seeing the adaptation of range versus melee, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, just playing. My monk is my main now, and playing on that, I'll farm during the week since I have less time to play. I'll just do 2 or 3 runs through Act 3. And yeah, you don't find upgrades anymore once you're at a certain point. And it is kind of I guess it's disappointing and a little boring. But at the same time, I suppose it really depends on your goals. So if you want to face roll Master 5, like you still do need to keep playing and eventually find those upgrades that are coming shorter and shorter, or I guess longer and longer actually, between play sessions. But I don't know. I mean, eventually, I think the console does have a much shorter shelf life than PC, and that's probably done intentionally so that by the time ROS or the new patch next year gets here, we'll be bored of it and ready to go back to PC.
Bobby's always thinking ahead, isn't he?
Got to get those gold toilets.
So that was the question. People were so excited when the console started. They were seeing these screenshots and saying, "Oh, look at these awesome items! I want that." And people just say, "Well, it doesn't matter what the number is. If you find it really quickly, just because the number's bigger, you're still going to get bored once you've got everything with the new numbers." And it just seems like they made the console to be much more quickly mastered. The shared Paragon and stuff obviously ties in with that. Whereas you've been playing the PC for a year and a half and haven't found any item upgrades yet, and you're already out of item upgrades in the console. So
That's true.
pick your poison.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I mean, we don't have to segue into another topic on this one, but that, I mean, that
Yes, we
is
do actually. We're ready to move on.
that was one of my biggest, one of my bigger issues with the potential balancing of the removal of the auction house. Because if Loot 2.0 is going to be, every single item that you've ever want is going to drop, then you're not going to have that incentive to continue to hunt for it. It's not like in Diablo 2 where you did have a pretty decent chance of fighting uniques and legendaries and such, but you'd constantly be hunting. Well, I need that Vex rune to complete this rune word or something along those lines. That it took you a while to actually go through and get certain items to be able to do certain builds. So I do hope that even though we'll get good drops in Loot 2.0, that there's going to be certain legendaries that are going to be considerably rarer than the other ones. Ones that will actually give us purpose to continue to play the game and hunt, or at least accumulate some stuff to trade for, which might be a pain without the auction house to help facilitate that.
Well, see, I think
I think
go ahead.
I think the goal is what you were just saying, Katniss, where you get good enough stuff to do whatever MP5 or something, but then you have to hunt to find the really good stuff. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that it's going to be a change in the way that we think about the game, in that you're going to have items that let you just play, at a decent level. You're going to find with the targeted drops and things like that, you'll have the main stat and the gear that lets you, go on loot runs and whatever. But I think with these added like passive effects that are coming in, and also just generally like trying to make a different build, especially once things get popular and you start seeing them on forums, you're gonna be hunting for specific things. Oh, and another thing too, with all the legendaries scaling up, you're gonna be getting more loot and a bunch more legendaries, but they may not be exactly the ones that you want. So the game kind of has to throw a bunch of stuff at you so that you do eventually find like, the one ring that you're trying to get, and then
The one
fifth,
ring.
the one ring.
Yeah,
rule
yeah,
them all.
wrong game.
Sorry about that. And once the fifth version of it drops, maybe it has rolled that passive that you were absolutely looking to get on it, and so that can only happen
Yeah,
in a
good luck with
system, right? That can only happen in a system where you're getting a bunch of legendaries in general, so that you can hopefully get the ones that you want.
Potentially, I mean that's going to be the balance that Blizzard has to get right. They have to give you enough, to satiate your need for the items and the upgrades, but they're going to have to make it rare enough so that way you actually have to put in some time and effort with which to get it. Because if the items are too easy to get, then you're going to get bored. But if they're too hard to get, and with no facilitated trade in the auction house, it would be even a worse scenario.
That's a good.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss the auction house. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I mean, how many Stone of Jordans have you ever found in Diablo 3? And were any of them the one you actually wanted with the particular skill and the particular bonus and the other particular bonus? There's just such a variety. And, those new passive rings, it looks like we're going to have the puzzle ring or something. There's going to be, 57 versions of it. And then, if you want the one that's got, reduced cooldown on teleport, well, you got to find 117 of them before you get that one. So,
Mm-hmm.
It's true. But
I
And
really,
then
I really think they've got to have some better trading system coming up. They're not going to just throw us back into wugging in channels. You know, I hope we're going to get some news on that on BlizzCon.
Well, you
yeah,
got
they've said some of the comments that they've made so far is, of course, that there will be more at BlizzCon. You know, they said that in the video for when they were announced the closing down of the auction house, so there will be more to come at BlizzCon. But some of the comments that Josh Mosquera has made on Twitter made it seem as if, you know, they're still talking about what it is they're going to replace it. So that made me a little bit worried because, oh, we're shutting down the auction house, but we haven't quite figured out what it is that we're going to replace it. But it's okay. You know, don't panic. You know, one of those things.
Do you think they don't know, or they're just saying that they just saying, "Oh, give us ideas so we'll feel included, and like our little words matter to them"?
Potentially, but I don't. I guess I don't really see what a benefit would be in doing it in that respect. Because if you knew what it was that you're going to do, you could, soothe all the fears that people are having, or I guess should say the few people that have fears, because everyone else seems to be all rainbows and sunshines with the removal of the auction house. That we've got it on lock. We have what we want to do and what we want to replace. We just don't have the fine details worked out yet. But we'll be announcing more of it at BlizzCon, or even just giving us some hints at what the system will be in place. Why leave it up in the air and make it seem as if you don't yet know what it is that you're going to be doing.
Well, the auction house is closing in what, 4 months? So they better have some damn ideas, right?
Yeah, yeah.
5 months? Yeah, 5 months.
5 months. Yeah.
Though, I mean, there's also going back to your recent trip over to the Blizzard offices where you said when they like one of the comments that you had made is when they said that they're talking about things, so that meant that they actually had in-game models and that they were actually physically testing on it, and they weren't just, it was beyond just talking and stuff on a whiteboard. So I guess that could be one thing, that they actually have certain systems that they're testing out.
And I
I
think
hope.
also with like an iterative process, even if they have ideas, like let's say that you throw out something, you're like, well, I think trading should involve a much more robust social platform. You announce clans and guilds and things like that. You should definitely utilize some sort of message board system or whatever. And what if some dev is like, I had an idea like that in my back pocket, but I never really brought it up. Like, let me explore that a little bit more, throw it into the iterative process and have, you know, a group of people try it out and see if that is a better way to facilitate trade versus whatever it is they could have developed already. So I think in a way that we have to put a little bit of faith in Blizzard. People's I'm sure people's faith and hope have already been maxed out back when the release happened, but I have to imagine that they have some clue. They wouldn't remove a huge thing like the auction house without anything else, constructive or in place. And I think that maybe this solicitation of ideas via Twitter and whatnot is just another way for them to say, all right, we have something. Is there something better?
Rather different style of like trade that they use in Guild Wars 2, where you actually you post an item that you want to buy, although that really wouldn't work in Diablo, and people would just like fill that order, or a system that Final Fantasy XI used, where they had a very limited auction house, like you could only have 7 items listed, but you could, in your character, select certain items that you had in your inventory that you wanted to sell. And so you could just sit in the middle of a town and people could click on you and see what you had available to sell in your store. And then they could make kind of like a social map mode or something along those lines, where it'll put like 100 players into, say, the Chaldean Bazaar, and you could run around and see what everyone has to sell. And if you didn't like what the people in that particular instance had, you could like click on the doorway and it will take you to the next zone. And you just travel through, seeing if there's something along those lines. Or they could also bring back named games.
No, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So it's funny, the whole point with the auction house and all these trade stuff, like what you were just saying, Neinball, like that's basically an auction house that's much less convenient than the current auction house.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, we can't have an auction house. We need something that's less user friendly and less easily worked. And people are like, yes, good idea. Where, in what other sense do you get?
Yeah. That,
I
that
realize this is. I realize this is the plan of all Windows upgrades.
Yeah, I mean that is like
But
the
everybody
biggest
hates
thing.
Windows upgrades. Somehow they like it when it's Diablo 3. We're gonna make trading much more difficult and inconvenient. Awesome!
Yes,
Finally, I've been waiting for
finally.
this.
Uh,
I'm not, and somehow this is a good thing. I'm not quite sure how that's going to hold up once we see it in
And then,
practice.
of course, if you have the differentiating opinion and say that I don't think that the removal of the auction house is all that great, you have no idea what you're talking about, and people just like bring out the torches and pitchforks and drive you out of town if you express any not even love but any understanding of why the auction house is a good thing.
It's a very
I have
polarizing
quite
issue.
recently bought probably 4,000 tomes of secret for all the crafting and upgrading of gems and stuff that I've done on characters.
Uh,
That's one of the problems in hardcore. When you die, you lose like a lot of gems, and you have to make new gems, even if you have the gold for them and the materials. And I don't really see how it's going to be an improved experience if I have to, instead of just going on the auction house and buying 500 tomes of secret at once, I have to like go to every different character and like buy 10 from each person or 20 and like haggle over prices. And I just don't see that that is an improvement in any way, shape, or
But
form.
see,
yeah.
I do though. I do because it makes it.
Torches, pitchforks,
Yeah.
torches.
Here they come. I
Do you have
I've
them,
got it
Neinball?
ready, so choose your words
Okay, good.
wisely.
All right. Let me think about this. What I wanted to say is I remember back in D2 when I was, pretty poor starting out. The only thing that I knew I had control over was what I could pick up in the game. So I would go and just play like a normal game, face roll it, pick up a bunch of chippies, and fill a stash with or an inventory with that. And I knew right away that I'd be able to get like one SOJ or whatever it was at the time for that stuff. And I think that'll kind of be what we might see. Like commodities will gain a new importance or a new price or whatever. Someone who is just newly entering the game, they all of a sudden have an even footing because they can guarantee picking up tomes of secrets. Like those aren't hard to find, but they have a use. Like people will want them. So if their value, their intrinsic value goes up, all of a sudden all I need to do is just play the game and pick up tomes of secrets while I'm also getting all these loot 2.0 drops and stuff. And I'll eventually be able to trade for something that I'll want, and that'll be a very powerful upgrade versus these like minor transactions of let me trade my 50 tomes for 1 million gold or whatever.
Going back down memory lane, 40 chip gems is actually what I traded for my first pair of Trangle's gloves on my Necromancer.
See,
Brings back memories. But the opposite side of that is, of course, is just the sheer amount that we need currently. That's something that could be, say, rebalanced.
mm,
But how few of these are they going to make it in order to craft items or craft gems, or how many more are you going to have drop? How many more are we going to have to spend time clicking and picking up gems and tomes and things like that when like one of the arguments that Azure made a couple weeks ago was, gold itself will take on, the aspect of being a commodity once the auction house is removed. Why can't we still just use gold to trade those items? And for those, I actually saw one suggestion which I kind of liked was you could keep an auction house but have it just for commodities, gems, tomes, those types of things.
hmm
Or you could have a vendor in the game that sells flawless squares, sells tomes, sells enchanting mats, and the price would vary with some of course, some sort of overcomplicated algorithm that the price will increase and drop based on how many people are buying at that given point in time. It would kind of fluctuate with the prices. Since they have so much data from the auction house currently, they have an idea of what these materials, are worth and how their value changes over time in implementing new crafting recipes and things like that, that they could just do something that act as a major gold sink to where you just go to the some vendor and just buy the amount that you need, and then if a lot of people are buying that particular day, the prices are going up, and if a lot of people are not buying, then the prices drop.
that's an interesting theory. I hadn't thought of that, but it would be cool because the vendors in the console are definitely more useful with the fact that they sell rares very more often than you see on the PC version. I guess that it kind of becomes twofold. You could either have like this vendor that essentially operates what it sounds like as a Blizzard sanctioned auction house that only the gold is basically just being sent into this nether world of whatever it gets spent. It's a gold
Mhm.
sink.
Yeah, and
Or they, Go ahead.
Decent gold sinks is something that the game, of course, needed a while ago. Anyone that's seen the inflation in softcore, and the inflation in the past 6-7 months in hardcore, that there definitely is a need for a better gold sink in the game to help remove it from the economy.
Definitely. And then I guess the other flip side of what I was going to say was, you have that where you are seeing the inflation, and there are ways that they can create gold sinks to offset the inflation, get rid of the gold. But then there's also the fact that Blizzard controls the drop rates. So they could also determine, are we going to increase the amount of gold piles that drop, how 5,000 gold, 6,000 gold, whatever, and also gold from doing quests and things like that if they make those more profitable. But also just having, maybe you kill a treasure goblin and it drops 20 tomes of secrets or something, they could definitely include random events and things that help to offset the fact that these commodities and whatnot won't be as readily accessible as they are now.
I like readily accessible commodities, and I'm going to be unhappy when they're not.
Mhm.
And I'm much more skeptical that they're going to have some amazing new system that's going to replace this and be an improvement on it. Partially because I'm kind of rich, relatively speaking, in hardcore, so I have more. If I was Neinball here with dying on the Paragon 3 constantly and scratching and clawing, it'd be a little harsher probably. But so going back to the Paragon 2.0 thing we were talking about a little bit earlier, it's going to be interesting. You guys have been following the stuff about the four tabs, and you get to put 1 point into each tab.
Mhm.
Sorry, 5 points in each tab each time you level, etc.
Hmm.
But it's really unclear how Magic Find is going to work. And as you said on the console, Katniss, you get Magic Find right to start with, and you get your bonuses. And everybody knows now. I'm not a real fan of how the system works now because I want Paragon 2.0 in some ways because my new monk is I just got to Paragon 60 today, I believe, or 61. Which, if you add it to my last one, I'm exactly 100 now. So I have achieved it at last. So suck on that, Xanth.
Woohoo!
But
Haha!
yes,
The winner is
so
you.
that just as an aside, that's if people don't realize the math, the amount of experience required to go from Paragon 0 to Paragon 60 is almost exactly the same as to go from Paragon 90 to 100. So if you have a
Ah,
90 and a 60, that adds up to 100 of experience.
Yeah, because
But it's it,
the halfway
yeah,
point is like 77 or something.
yeah. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but yeah, it's something like that. I think it's like 78 and a half actually. But I mean, people are saying we keep seeing this in forum posts where someone's like, "I'm going to make 5 Paragon 20s. That'll be that. Then I'll be Paragon 100." It's like, no, that'll be Paragon 27.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Paragon 22 and a half. It, it
Uh,
it it scales up. But anyway, yeah. So that's if people don't realize the experience. Yeah. So once you're at level 90, that's the same as making a new character to 60 is getting to 100. Of course, not exactly the same because your Paragon 90 character is much more powerful and you got bonus stats and stuff. But the point is, my monk is now just getting to max MF. He's got a lot of MF gear, and he's got 22 or something from his follower. And so now I'm at the highest MF, and I can start to take off some of my gear and put on in theory put on stuff that boosts DPS and experience and hit points and stuff, and because I don't need the magic find anymore. But that's fun, of course, but then you have this pressure where you only feel like you have this one main. And if I've been playing my Witch Doctor and my Barbarian lately. I've got them both into like Paragon 15 area in hardcore, and it's fun for a change, for variety, whatever. But you just kind of feel like, what's the point? Because you're gaining experience on these characters, and they have 300 less magic find or something. And obviously that's not a problem in the console, but Paragon 2.0, in theory, we're going to get more of this sharing. But from what they've said, it doesn't sound like you'll have any magic find at all. So I was going to ask you this
Very
question
little.
earlier, Nineball. Ranked got it on console.
Hmm.
How would your experience lately be different if you had shared Paragon experience? So all these poor scratching Paragon 5s you keep making, and bad things happen.
Yeah, definitely the loss of the demon hunter and the monk wouldn't have hurt as bad. It's like I think still, luckily, they were only in the 20s, so the amount of experience that I lost hasn't been that much. I just haven't had much of a chance to play the past month and a half or so. But the loss of the gear, I guess going into loot, digressing back into loot 2.0, is the loss of the gear and the amount of money that I had put into gearing up those characters hurt a lot more than the experience. But just having those bonus stats, especially from starting a new character, let alone just having not lost it in the first place, but you know, having those 27 extra levels, to power through, your 1 to 60 process is going to be huge for leveling up a new hardcore character. You could just dump everything into some defensive stats and hit points. You get someone to carry you through, so power level, and you have enough HP to survive the stray mob that come and hits you. And, just little things like that help you out.
I just don't know. The thing that kind of bugs me is back in Diablo 2, for instance, we had characters that were specifically built for Magic Find. Like I remember Flux, I used your Magic Find sorceress guide to make a character that I could use to just run Mephisto, Nightmare Hell, whatever, over and over and over. But my Barb was built in a completely different way that didn't necessarily result in fast Magic Find runs or whatever. So I guess it bothers me whenever people say I feel like I'm wasting my time playing another character because I'm not benefiting from the innate Paragon experience and Magic Find and all that good stuff. Just because it wasn't a thing that we worried about back in Diablo 2 or whatever. And I think they've started to alleviate that problem with increasing the legendary drop rate from level 1 to 59 so that it is more likely that you find something while you're leveling that character back up. Although, to be honest, obviously in PC, we all still complain that we don't find anything. And even if we do, obviously it's not super useful by the time you get to level 60. And I think that's probably going to be the case even with the scaling up. Like you're just going to keep upgrading, even if you find the same bracers over and over. They won't be as useful, but you'll at least still have that feeling of I'm finding things that are good for my character at the time. And then my second thing is actually looking at a post from Travis Day on Paragon 2.0. He noted that, they wanted to have spendable points, but there's a part here he says players already earn bonus stats, Magic Find and Gold Find when they earn a Paragon level, but we thought giving players more options and letting them choose what they wanted was going to be better all around. So to me, that sounds like you still will gain Magic Find and all the extra stuff plus
No.
a spendable point. No, that's
Yeah, I literally made a post like the next day that clarified.
Yeah, they
Oh.
later clarified that point. You
All right.
you get your 1 Paragon point to spend on that category when you level up, and that's it.
Okay, all right. I stand corrected.
And I don't see how that works then, because it seems like the Magic Find is in the which
Utility,
tab is
the
that?
adventure.
Utility. Yeah, whatever they're calling it now. It used to be utility, now it's adventure. And that tab also includes movement speed, pickup radius, and maximum resource and resource regeneration, or other things you can put those points into. If you're a low-level character, how likely are you going to be putting it in I'm thinking probably movement speed and resource will be the ones I'll be stacking on there. I mean, obviously it depends on the character and the build,
Yeah,
but
because at that lower level, your intent is to get to 60. You don't care about anything else.
Right.
And you put
so
it
if you don't, yeah,
you put it into the stats that help you accomplish that faster, such as movement speed.
yeah, and they said this whole thing, long ago. That was one of the points of the Paragon system was to remove Magic Find as an essential bonus on items. Because they've totally screwed up Magic Find bonus on items in Diablo 3, and it's just another random stat. You don't have specific items that you're putting on like gold wrap or whatever.
Yeah, it's a complete 180.
Chance guards.
Or
In
Skulder's
D2,
Ire.
yeah, in D2 there were some items, like God, what's the hat? Shaco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Harlequin Quest, which had like spectacular stats and Magic Find, and like the Oculus had that for the best sorceress item. But a lot of stuff, it was wealth or something like that, where you were specifically making a choice. I'm giving up, defense and hit points and whatever to get Magic Find. And in Diablo 3, it's just another stat that's just, it's really a crappy system. I can't believe they screwed up Magic Find as badly as they did in this game, but even though I use it constantly on my characters. But it seems like, they've said we're going to be lowering it, and if you don't get it as an inherent bonus, you could be Paragon 600 and still not have Magic Find maxed out on your characters because you wanted movement speed and pickup radius and resource regeneration.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like the whole point of Magic Find not being something essential from gear is not even an issue anymore. Like they've just forgotten that, unless there's just more we don't know yet.
I think there might be more we don't know yet because if you remember in the latest data mine, they're noted that legendary and I think it was rare items will have diminishing returns on Magic Finds. So I'm almost wondering if they're alleviating it through the drop rate and just making Magic Find not that important in general to have.
Yeah, increases diminish for rare and legendary and set items is what it says about Magic Find.
Yeah.
So does that mean it's not diminished for blue items. I mean, what?
Yeah.
That seems weird that they don't mention those.
True.
I guess that might just be, making it harder with which to reach the magic find cap. That they went through and plotted where, in order to reach the cap through your Paragon points, uh, if you can even reach the cap through Paragon points, since they have the limits, and we don't know how much you gain per point. You might be level 400 before you reach the maximum amount of points that you can put into Magic Find, and then you have to have the remaining like 200 or 300 or whatever percent Magic Find to the cap in order to gain through the items with the diminishing returns. Well, you need 700% Magic Find through items plus whatever you get through the Paragon in order to reach the cap. To try and make, I guess, reduce the quality of the items that you have drop.
That makes
That all makes me unhappy.
Yeah.
see.
I think there's got to be more to that we don't know.
Yeah,
'Cause unless they've totally changed their whole concept of not wanting Magic Find to be an important stat, unless they're going to redo it, and we don't know what the new legendaries are going to look like. Maybe there's, Wealth 2.0 is going to be this amazing, plus 600% Magic Find and minus 100 Res All or something like that,
Right.
where you actually get trade-offs like the system should have been done in the first place. Ahem. I blame Jay Wilson.
I blame console.
So,
yeah, you would,
so
wouldn't
while
you?
well, it is the console. So while we're on this topic of the max caps on stats, we have that in currently in the game where you can only get to 300 MF or GF, and there's a max cap of 25% on movement speed. But everything else, all the big stats, all the trifecta stats are uncapped, and that's one of the things we see in the data mining where it says critical hit chance is going to be maxed at 40%, crit damage at 250%, etc. And that's not a big deal if you're self-found because it's hard to get that much anyway, but many characters now, really well-geared characters, have 60% crit chance and 600% crit damage. I mean, or even higher. And if they're cutting that to 40 and 250, that's a gigantic difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but that says from items, right? So then we can still go above that amount via the Paragon 2.0
Paragon.
system.
Or,
And then-
Yeah,
skills.
that actually makes the Paragon. Yeah, the skills though, they seem like they've taken it off almost everything.
Yeah.
There's very few skills that add crit chance or damage anymore.
And do gems get included in that? Because I mean, like the critical hit damage, the Marquee Emerald is almost half that cap.
It's true.
Yeah. And there's items that have 2 sockets, so it seems that, or you can get, up to 100. I think there's got to be lower stats.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of getting 50% on rings and 100% on amulets, it'll be, 25 and 50 or something like that.
See, and I saw-
the other thing that they could do is leave the current values on the items, so that makes you want to spread out what stats you get on your items, and it'll make a. It's still kind of crappy that they're adding in the caps on them and limiting our choices, but it does make the actual system more dynamic. So because you'd go through and you find a trifecta ring, and it's like, but I'm already maxed on attack speed, so that's not that great. But that means that I can then trade out attack speed for more crit chance on my gloves or something along those lines. You're playing Tetris with your stats more or less.
It's Diablo 2 again, yeah.
And I completely agree with Neinball. I saw Flux, your post in one of the forum topics about the fact that you thought that there might be lower, going forward, lower maximums basically for those like crit chance, crit damage, etc. But that didn't seem to make sense to me because we're basically, once ROS is released, we're going to have a new tier of what you might call legacy items or whatever. And if they were to make it so that these new like level 70 items don't roll crit chance, attack speed, whatever, as high as the preceding level 60 items, then who would ever get rid of their old items? In some weird fashion, we'd be holding on to these like 10% gloves or whatever, crit chance gloves, just because we can't get that anymore. So it would seem to me like Neinball was saying, have it be the same maximums or heck even higher on level 70 items, and that way you can top out on 1 or 2 items and then have more gearing choices on your bracers or whatever.
Okay, 2 points on that. One, you're playing the console. If your gloves have plus 400 strength and vitality, you'll probably take that over 3% more crit chance, right?
That's true, yeah.
And the other thing is that we need more stats that are worth having. That's the other part of this argument. I mean, currently you always want more crit chance and AS, etc. But that's also because all the other stats suck.
Yeah.
what else are you gonna get? Arcane resistance or cooldown. There's not. I mean, they need stats like cooldown, lessening, and crushing blow, and all these kind of things we saw in Diablo 2 that you actually wanted more of other things.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I was saying, that it's crappy that they're forcing decision through limiting our options. That is one way of getting us to value other stats more, but it's a bad way of doing it. But the way that the game is designed, it's all about killing as fast as you possibly can and getting to the next mob as fast as you can, which means that you're going to take the things that increase your movement speed, increase your overall capabilities of moving, whether it's through skills such as sprint and whirlwind with barbarians, and then you're going to get the thing that gives you the most damage, which is currently crit and crit damage, and that's just how the game has been designed to be played. And so if they don't make any other radical switch ups to how the system and the stats work, the only really way of doing it is to put caps on it without making any other major changes to make a shift to where this skill or this stat might be useful. Though some of the things that they are doing, like making the monk and other abilities that heal people around them scale with the health globe, the health globe and potion stat, or even just making it to where some of the skills, like I think they made the breath of heaven scale with the health globe radius pickup, or that might be a suggestion that I saw. I don't remember.
I think you're
Little
right.
things like little things like that could make those stats more valuable, at least to have a little bit of on your character, you know. But I mean that already happens a little bit, and that's why shoulders with health pickup range is valued so highly, because it doesn't take the place of crit damage or any other useful stat. It's like the one item that has a blank space to put something useful in.
That's a good point. I had something written down here in terms of notes before we started out, and one of the things that I was observing from the community was just there seemed to be a backlash on, like you were saying, having hard caps on different things that we could hit, just because it's more Blizzard telling us what they want versus the player having a choice of gimping themselves, like by going through diminishing returns or whatever.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, because no matter what benefits we get out of the system by making us value other stats and making other stats interesting and making more well-rounded characters, it's a shitty thing to do, because you're telling the player, no, you can't do that. You're limiting what we can do, and so obviously, in that aspect, it's a bad thing. And depending upon how the system goes over and what other interesting choices we have, such as the cooldown reduction, or if they bring anything back like the crushing blows, like Flux said, or replace the dots, the dots like on the scorn and such, with the old open wounds stat, or prevent monster heals and things of that nature. What else do we have?
I think that they needed to have these things in there in the first place. Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 had lots of limits on stuff. You had max limits to all your base stats in D1. And if you were a wizard, you could only get, well, what the hell was wizard called? Sorcerer in that
Yep.
game. I think it was 45 was your max strength, and the heaviest armor was 90 strength requirement. So you knew if you wanted to wear full plate mail, you had to get plus 45 to other items. And this is something that a longtime reader and I used to make mods, Sky Lanthanide, always posts about, how you had to actually plan your gear in D2. You knew you needed, I need 15 strength on this armor and on my amulet, or else I can't wear my armor, that kind of stuff. And of course, we still had that in Diablo 2, but it was less of an issue because you could, customize your stats more
Yeah.
and just much bigger numbers.
It wasn't so much more of a, this is all I can put into my character, so I have to have this through items, or it's more of a, well, I know I can get this much from items, so I can get away with having this little in strength or this little in dexterity in order to equip what I need to.
But the bigger thing in Diablo 2, I actually made a forum post about this months ago saying, do you guys miss breakpoints? And most people said, no, no breakpoints are horrible. And as the debate went on, I don't mean literally do you miss breakpoints. I mean, the way they worked in the game was, you only got an advantage, you only got an improvement that made a difference at certain points, punctuated equilibrium kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to increase your frame of your attack speed or whatever, and you would get an increase of frame at 5%, 12%, 27%, 45%, 82%, 117%, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so that meant you planned gear, and that wasn't quite a hard cap. It was more of a diminishing return than a hard cap. Of course, D2 had hard caps on resistances, and that's why you didn't have all res. That was a stat that was mandatory on every single piece of armor in the game, because it was useless.
Right.
You got to 75% or higher if other gear could raise it. But that's what I mean. People were talking about hardcaps in D3 like a month after release, saying we should have hardcaps on Resol and Armor or something because otherwise you just want all res on every single piece of equipment you have, and that of course is still the case today. Except it's also critical hit chance and critical hit damage in AIS. And now they're doing it with hardcaps, but I think they could have been a better job with some kind of punctuated equilibrium or with diminishing returns of some kind. Where okay, if you really want to put 75% critical hit chance, you can do it, but it's going to be after 40%, each 5 points only gives you 1% more or something like that. So if you really, really, really want to put, you can get up to 50% or 55%, but you'll be spending all of your gear just to get that stat, and obviously you're wasting 40% of it that you could have had. And then, of course, what we said earlier, they need other compelling stats that are interesting to get, and not just because you can't get more of
Mm-hmm.
X. You need Y that actually is good in itself. Maybe it's not as good as X, but if you have diminishing returns on X, then it becomes more of a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, that's really, really hard to make an item system that does that. And they had it in Diablo 2 after 6 years of patching. It slowly evolved, and they didn't get it from birth in Diablo 3,
Yeah.
obviously, and don't have it yet. But hopefully, the ROS will make some steps towards
That,
that.
I guess that is a fair point. If it was just something that was in place in the beginning, it wouldn't be as if, they're taking away our candy at this point. And one of the other interesting aspects that we kind of, band-aided or patching it in later is, there's no hard cap on the plus damage affix. So you can stack that as
Yeah.
high as you want. So now that's going to be, what attack speed was at the beginning and what crit and crit damage is now. If they don't put a cap on that, which, if anyone's listening, they might want to reconsider. Now every single ring, and amulet slot is going to have that plus damage affix on it because there's no cap on it. And that's going to be the go-to stat that everything is going to have, or the item is going to be completely worthless.
See, but that's useful with the item system that we have now, but obviously we can always say, well, we don't know what they're going to do in the future to
Yep,
change it and if that'll be as
do not
important.
know.
But also the most latest Wyatt Cheng, uh, you know, blessing us with his wisdom was the fact that we know that black weapons will be changed in the future now. So I think that takes away some of the worth of the average damage roll too, because I think part of that was it was benefiting off of the plus elemental damage thing, and now we're going to be seeing that that's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. Well,
Okay, changing topics. Do you want one last point, Neinball?
no, I mean that was just going to be in something with agreeance. Like you said earlier, that's something that should have been in the beginning that didn't have that one, item property have such a huge advantage over all the other, weapon damage mods.
It's really hard to make good items and affixes balance in ARPGs, and that's
But
when they had a whole new, as we often said
there,
before the game, this is a whole new team without much of
yeah.
experience in this field.
Well, I mean,
So
there's it definitely is hard to get a razor's edge balance, but I wouldn't call the attribute, the advantage that a black weapon has over any of the other elemental damages, with the possible exception of cold, having such a huge level of difference between them. That one just seems like a rather large oversight.
well, that was a bug. So
Hmm.
okay, I think we've covered the bases here. You've been listening to the Diablo podcast. We are online at diabloinkgamers.com and moo
Moo?
moo.
Moo 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 moo.